All right, person number 1, person 2, person 3.
The coronavirus outbreak has complicated our lives in many ways, regardless if we or someone we know has been infected. What we thought had been so normal that we never bothered questioning it in the first place has now changed or has even become removed from our daily lives. Our daily lives are also further interrupted by how it affects our daily commitments, such as our jobs. For me as a student, of course, it affected my ability to attend classes, learn materials, and to socialize with my classmates. For instance, when you think of a class like public speaking, where you actually have to stand in front of a large group of people in person, you can imagine how it might affect that class. Despite this, it might surprise you to know that even through an online format, I learned a lot for that class. The sources I'll be utilizing for my speech today are myself, of course, as a student, as well as the course textbook, A Pocket Guide to Public Speaking by O'Hare, Wilkenstein, and Stewart. Today, I want to present to you my experiences as an online student for public speaking, while reflecting on the new lessons I've learned, what I could have improved on, as well as how different it is to present a speech to a stream compared to in person, like right now. As for what the new lessons I learned, the first one is how to manage my speech anxiety, specifically which one I had in particular, which is preparation anxiety. Instead of performance anxiety like most people have, I freak out over how much I have to actually plan and prepare for, which makes me procrastinate a lot. To solve this, I also learned something else, which was how to work with an outline. Outlines help me to organize things categorically, which makes me break down everything down so I can actually pace myself better before the deadline. And also, as for what I could have improved on, it mainly boils down to my body language. For instance, for my facial expressions, I noticed like in my earlier speeches, I would always have a flat expression, which was not very engaging with the audience. But most importantly, it would have to do with my body language, or my hand movements. Whenever I'm talking, I have no idea what to do with my hands at all, that it's so bad. To help solve this, I plan on actually recording my rehearsals and then looking at what I'm doing with my hands and face expressions so I can improve on it. Furthermore, as for what I could have done better in my previous assignments, it mainly has to do with doing less speech memorization and more free flow. Whenever I forget what to say next, I start to freak out and everything starts to fall apart for me. So to prevent this, I usually memorize my script verbatim. In my mind, as long as I knew what I wanted to say next, it became so much easier to say it. But that also meant that when I didn't know what to say, it threw me off way harder. Therefore, I plan on using actual keyword speech outlines instead of my full sentence ones like I usually do. Alternatively, or at least when it comes to when I'm actually speaking, I know that there is in fact a difference between doing it in person like right now compared to doing it face-to-face. Specifically when it comes to face-to-face with a visual aid, like if I had a PowerPoint here, is that while it's true that PowerPoints can be like a big crutch if you rely on them too much, a well-designed one can be a lifesaver. Like I mentioned earlier, I freak out when I don't know what to say next, but visual aid can throw me that key word that helps me refresh my memory. As for when I don't have a visual aid like right now, it's understandably these type of speeches freak me out way more and I get way more stressed. But that's actually good for me because it helps me actually work on my weaknesses instead of relying on the visual aids to cover them for me. As for when I'm doing it through a stream, I found those way more comfortable, so they were also my favorite way of doing it. Instead of standing in front of an actual group of people like I'm doing right now, I'm standing in front of my laptop's webcam. This also meant, and also instead of them looking directly at me, like at my face, they're looking at my PowerPoint through their screens. Which means that my oral skills and the quality of my visual aid is way more important. This helps me focus on actually properly delivering my speech instead of worrying about the audience or how I look and my insecurities. In the end, the experiences I've had as a public speaking student online have all been positive, in that I still have a lot to learn, but also much to use in the future. Looking back on it, like for instance, when it comes to my managing speech anxiety, this will help me procrastinate less with the help of work outline in general for all my classes. Furthermore, I also noticed that I don't have a problem with my confidence per se or my eloquence for words, but mainly my flexibility in actually using my body language and my thoughts. Lastly, while yeah, a PowerPoint can be a crutch, for students in particular, they're especially important when the audience is focusing on them instead of you. To conclude my speech, I want to read a quote found in the course syllabus by Ralph Waldo Emerson, which reads as, who is a famous essayist and lecturer known as a champion for individualism, which reads as, all great speakers were bad speakers at first. Although this seems like a really straightforward statement, I typically look back at it to remind myself why I took this class in the first place. Thank you for listening and good night.